Well, I'm so excited to chat with you today, Carly. So I want to start and just have you share a little bit more about you so our listeners can get to know more about you, what led you to want to be a midwife, and really help educate and empower women about pregnancy and birth and so much what we're going to talk about today.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on here and get to have this discussion. And just the more word we can get out, the better. So, I have been a licensed midwife for 6 years, and was always really interested in women's health and reproductive rights, and walking alongside women and families to have healthy pregnancies and positive birth experiences. And so I started in Seattle and kind of worked my way all around the state, and then landed here in Skagit and worked at the Mount Vernon Birth Center for a couple of years as one of their midwives, and had just such a wonderful experience there. I love the community in Skagit Valley and getting to know all the families. And what led me to kind of start this more education focused venture was that I had my first child last May of 2021, and everything just changes when you have a baby, right? So I thought, yeah, I'm going to go back to work after 3 months. It'll be great. It'll be easy. Not the case. So I went back to work and just realized that I needed to be home more, but knew that I did not want to leave the world of pregnancy and birth. And I still feel like I had something to offer, and just wanted to stay connected to birthing families in the community. So my main goal with what I'm doing is to educate, empower, inform, like through education, and having just another resource and support person in your back pocket through your pregnancy to make sure you get all of your questions answered, make sure you know all of your choices throughout your pregnancy, so that going into birth, you feel like you're the one in charge, because so often our power is taken away in the birthing room, and, more or less depending on what your environment is. But there's a huge power dynamic. And if you feel like you have more information going into this process, my hope is that women and families can feel like they can make decisions for themselves that are right for them, to lead to a more positive birth experience. And I say positive birth experience because everyone has different goals. Everyone has a different idea of what they want their birth to be. Everyone has different fears. Different things will be more or less traumatic for someone versus someone else. So, even if it doesn't go the way that you maybe thought it was going to in your head, if we can leave birth feeling positive and happy about the experience, it does so much for like your mental health and recovery in the entire postpartum period, that I just feel like there's a lot that gets missed in prenatal care. Even if you have an awesome provider, there just isn't enough time to talk about everything that really needs attention. So that is why I'm here.
I love it. Well, and I think too, during pregnancy, right, and in the medical system, they're really focused on, health of baby and mom, and not so much about what she can do during pregnancy leading up to preparation for birth.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So I want to start there. Let's talk about that. So one of the biggest things I think that comes up is like, okay, at what stage in pregnancy should women really start to be thinking about their birth plan? What do they want? What do they not want? Kind of, is there a timeline where you're like, if you haven't done it yet, like by this time, we definitely should be doing some prep work?
In terms of a birth vision and things like that, I think on the earlier side, just the beginning of your third trimester is a good place just to start thinking about it. And that's around, 28 weeks. And most women will birth near their due date, maybe a couple weeks before, maybe a couple weeks after, but you you could have your baby at 35, 36 weeks and come a little early and catch you off guard. So I think generally in my sessions, it's kind of a early third trimester discussion, because along with, envisioning what you want and what you want your birth to look like, there are things that you can do kind of a few weeks into that third trimester to help prepare your body, whether it's different exercises or nutritional things you can add in that have been shown to help with more effective labors or shorter labors and things like that. So I talk about that as well.
Okay. Can you share what some of the nutritional, whether it's like one or two things?
And there's just a couple. They're really, just a couple. There's really simple. So starting at 36 weeks, there's been some research shown to eating dates every day for the last month of your pregnancy, that it can soften and ripen your cervix leading up to labor, which people may or may not know that during early labor and the first phases of labor, your cervix starts out maybe 3-4 centimeters long and has to shorten and thin in order for your body to keep dilating and opening. So eating those dates kind of does some of that early work. So the study that was done had women eating 6 dates a day starting at the 36 week mark, and showed that it reduced their time of labor. And
like total time from like start to finish, or pushing stage?
Total time.
Okay, that's so hard. I think it's so hard to measure.
It is really hard to measure. So one study, it's an easy thing to do if you can tolerate the taste of dates during pregnancy.
Put them in a smoothie. Put them in kids.
Put them in a smoothie.
We love dates and smoothies.
Dip them in peanut butter if you don't really like how sweet they are. I ate dates like candy I ate them sparingly through the whole pregnancy, and then I ramped it up at like 35, 36 weeks. And
dates are doable because it's great. It's like, if you want something a little sweet, like they're awesome. And there's lots of fiber in them. So that's awesome.
Yes. And then the other one is red raspberry leaf tea is a really, really popular one. But a lot of people don't know about it still. It is kind of the ultimate women's tea. It's known as a uterine toner. And even not pregnant, it's really great like during your menstrual cycle to help with cramps. So drinking that, there's not a hard and fast recommendation. You can drink it generally after your first trimester, here and there throughout pregnancy. And then again, like 35, 36 weeks, that month before your due date, ramping it up, drinking like 3 cups a day. And that is shown to shorten labor as well. Yes, totally hard to measure. I agree. But it's great for your uterine health overall. I've had clients sip it during labor and as a postpartum tonic as well. And it also is just really rich in vitamins and minerals. So
I love that you said for postpartum as well. Yeah, it's something I've drank on and off over the years to probably be more consistent with it around my menstrual cycle. But yeah, I've heard of it for, around our menstrual cycles. I don't remember. I'm trying to think if I've heard of it for pregnancy or not. I don't think so.
Oh yeah.
But it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So in any like pregnancy tea that you get at the grocery store, like it has its main ingredient is red raspberry leaf.
Okay.
And it usually has like some nettle or alfalfa or oat straw, like other great ones that are they're healthy for blood flow and their vitamin and mineral content. But red raspberry leaf is the ultimate pregnancy.
Okay. And so for postpartum, which that makes a lot of sense, right? As uterus is coming back. So while we're on the nutrition thing, is there anything from an early postpartum besides the tea that you would recommend for women?
I don't know that I have specific postpartum nutrition recommendations. Okay. I think when I'm talking with people about postpartum prep, things that are nutrient dense, there's theories about warm foods and soups and broths and how that can be really helpful for just inner healing and feeling that warmth. But I talk a lot about convenience also, because there's not a lot of time and not a lot of sleep. So prepping like freezer bags of stew, like things that are really easy to pop into the crock pot, and having snacks around and lots of water, because if you're breastfeeding. So postpartum, I mean, red raspberry leafage tea is great. In those first early.
You mentioned breastfeeding. So what's your thoughts on, oatmeal, upping your oats, like the oatmeal cookies and eating more oats? Like, do you see that helps your clients? Do we really know? I mean, I feel like
I don't know that we really know. I mean, you definitely need more calories.
Yes.
And so I think it's helpful in that way. We don't really know. I think, you can do the oats, or people say hops helps, or there's all sorts of lactation herbs out there, which,
like fenugreek, right? Like fenugreek tea, mother's milk tea, stuff like that, which I did drink that. I remember drinking that because, and I do feel like it helped, but maybe that's more placebo. I don't know.
I had some mother's milk tea. I think it maybe helped a little. I had this herbal tincture, which I'd have to look at it to remember what the exact herbs are in it. When I felt like my milk supply was decreasing a bit, and I do feel like it helped, but you have to like take a lot of it and every day. And it's this tiny bottle, and I didn't feel like it was super feasible long-term to just be like chugging these herbs 5 times a day.
Yeah.
So yes. I feel like I was going to say something else about postpartum nutrition. I kind of slipped my mind. Oh, just that in the first few days, something that I talk about with my clients is your first bowel movement after birth. You want it to be as easy as possible, because it can be kind of scary. So lots of fiber-rich foods, fruits and veggies, and hydration. They're important always, but especially in those first few days. And then taking extra doses of magnesium are going to be helpful for those first few days, just to sort of regulate, because as people may or may not know, during labor, lots of hormone shifts. There can be lots of bowel movements, and you just get emptied out a lot of the time. So you might not have a bowel movement after birth for 1, 2, 3 days sometimes. And depending on if you had stitches or how things are feeling down there, that first bowel movement, not gonna lie, it's not the most fun. So if you can set yourself up for it to be a little easier in any way, nutrition is a way to do that, getting a squatty potty, being really hydrated, all those things.
Great advice. Such great advice. I love that. Okay, so this is leading us into our birth conversation. Let's get right into this, because I know you and I are both really excited to talk about all of the birth side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's actually talk about, should we go right into the pushing stage?
Sure,
or should we let's back up. We want to talk about, let's lead into birth. And I know you're big on visualization, and I am too. I think this is such an untapped resource that so many moms don't utilize enough, right? Mm-hmm. Going into birth, visualizing what you want. So let's start there, into birth, and then we'll get into.
Sure. Yes. Yes. Visualizing what you want, and also going in with as positive a mindset as you can, like being calm and having the confidence in your body, and trusting that, like, okay, my body can do this. My body can push out this baby. And I mean, if you've been through labor, you kind of know at some point you're kind of along for the ride. And so learning how to cope, and learning to trust your body, and learning to relax enough to allow labor to take place, because stress can really negatively affect labors. So I feel like it's really important for women to visualize their bodies birthing their babies, and that they can do this. So I generally refer all my clients to various birth meditation recordings, and even watching birth videos that, it can kind of be scary sifting through birth videos online. So I do that for them, and kind of talk with them about what they're comfortable watching and tailor that. Because I think not a lot of people get to see birth and that it works. And it's this unbelievable miracle of a thing that goes through our body that it just seems unbelievable sometimes. So if I can show women positive births and that it works, I think that can help build some confidence and going through those positive birth affirmations. And in those last weeks, just doing things like, okay, let's do some deep squats. Let's get you on your yoga ball. Let's, drink your raspberry tea and like talk to your baby and really getting in that mindset. And then on a more like logistical standpoint, I do have lists and topics that I go through with my clients of, okay, has your provider talked to you about these scenarios, or how do they deliver the placenta, or have they talked about these medications for your baby? Like, do you know about them? Do you want them? Do you want more information? What to do if your water breaks, and what are your options? Just because every birth location, whether you're at a birth center or at a hospital, there's different protocols, and a protocol doesn't always mean that it's right for you. So talking about all the different options and scenarios. And one of the things that I have been offering is a labor support line. And I had a client recently who, we talked when she was in labor finally, but it really was this like week-long lead up of sort of this on and off labor. And she was dilating, and then her water broke, and she was being told all these different things. And I felt like I was able to kind of give her the facts and be like, this is what this means. These are your options. Do what you're comfortable with. And so I think there are just so many things leading up to labor to talk about. And kind of like you mentioned on my Instagram page, the comment about pushing, that we're told, okay, you're fully dilated, time to push, let's go,
push with all your might and hold your breath and just go.
There are a lot of different ways to do things. The more and more information we get about how our bodies work and what can be more gentle to them, that, not every provider is up to speed on all those things. And things are, and I'm not against hospital birth. I think they're wonderful. But I would say in hospitals, there are more rigid protocols and timelines and the structure to birth and how they do things. And I feel like families and women can sometimes feel like cornered, like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing now because this is what I'm being told to do. But if you kind of have a sense of like how your body works and how birth works on a deeper level, you can kind of take that control back, and you're like, no, I'm just going to breathe a little bit, or I'm going to go sit on the toilet for a second. I'm fine.
Taking your time versus the sense of feeling rushed and like, oh my gosh, so I'm feeling the urge to push. I have to push right now, when you actually don't, unless of course it is a medical emergency.
Right. Yeah. There are always outlier scenarios where you need to push with all your might and get your baby the heck out. Yeah. But, in a normal scenario where everything is fine, mom's fine, baby is fine, you might find out you're fully dilated by an exam. And at that point, I generally tell people, okay, breathe as best you can. Like, your body is going to move your baby down, and there will be a point where you absolutely can't not push. And that's the point where true like pushing and movement happens. And even then, not everyone, you don't need to do what I call it like purple pushing, where you hold your breath and like bear everything down. That's not always necessary. And
it's hard on our pelvic floor.
Really, really hard on the pelvic floor. Yeah. So if we can do our best to breathe and in a way kind of hold back, like when your baby's low, if you can like feel your baby's head, like you're not going to stop it. So don't be afraid that you're going to hold things up. But if we can be a little bit gentler and slowing down at the end, it gives your tissues a little extra chance to stretch and catch up with these big changes that are happening. And like you said, can reduce tearing, which impacts our recovery greatly and just our long-term pelvic floor health.
Yes, absolutely. So what are some of your thoughts on either the, perineal stretching before even going into labor, like 36, 38 weeks, starting to do more of that, and or having, whether it's midwife or doctor, adding a little bit of extra lubrication very gently to your perineum. So then as baby's head is coming out, right, there's not as much friction. What are some of your thoughts on any of those techniques to help in just another added tool to add to our tool bag to help minimize tearing?
Yeah. And I used to get the perineal stretching question a lot, and we had some different handouts for it. And my bit on that is, I don't know that it necessarily reduces tearing directly, because you're not necessarily stretching your tissues so that they're like pre-stretched for birth. It's, not working that way, but I do think it can help us make a deeper, mind-body connection of what's going on and what those sensations might feel like during birth, and being a little less scared of them, which allows us to relax more. Right. So I think doing it yourself or having your partner do it, or I've even had someone ask me during a prenatal visit, can you show me what perineal stretching is? So I did it for them so they could kind of see what they needed to do at home. That it's that stretching and kind of deep pushing, pulling on your perineal area to feel that little bit of stretch and burn as your tissue stretch, and learning how to fully just breathe into it and let it be there, and not get super tense and afraid and pull back. So I think it can just help prepare a little bit what that stretching might feel like, and so that when it happens, it's not as scary. Because pushing can catch us off guard sometimes. All of a sudden, maybe you didn't have an exam for a while, and you don't know how dilated you are, and that's fine. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, what's happening in my body? I think I'm pushing. And it can be really scary because it's a big change. And so, preparing in that way. During the birth, applying a little bit of oil and or lube and whatnot, I think it's personal preference. And you might not know what you want in the moment. I've seen it be helpful. I've also seen it just look excessive and unnecessary, to be honest. Where I was a birth assistant or, a birth support person, and the provider's dumping a bunch of oil on and stretching and everything. And my deep insides just say, stop it.
Well, I don't think so. Here's the difference is it's about here, my perspective on it is it's about just applying a little bit, not having your provider stretch. I think that's overstepping. And that's my,
and that used to be really standard, especially.
Really?
And it still happens.
Because what if the tearing's actually from them being forceful versus, again, the thought process behind doing it is that it's just adding a little extra. So as the head is coming out, right, there's less friction there for tearing. It's not about actually your provider manually stretching it in the moment, because that to me sounds way too aggressive.
Right. And, and I have been at births where not necessarily that stretching, but different hand maneuver involvements are necessary to get the baby out because they're stuck and not coming and whatnot. But if you can see that baby's coming, my preference personally, and what I see a lot of women want is generally some hands off, maybe a little bit of gentle support on the perineal tissue with a warm cloth or something. But a little extra lubrication, definitely not going to hurt. I also think, depending on the birth, there's so much going on down there that I haven't seen too many dry births.
Yes, that's true.
But with my personal experience with pushing and hands-on, hands-off and such, having done it with women as the provider, I, went into it with I'm going to be in, whatever position, who knows, my midwife's hand might be on my perineum or touching baby's head and helping me out down there. But when it came time, I was in the water, which also was not like an exact plan. I just ended up there. I was pushing in the water and I was sort of in this like half squat position. So baby was facing down, like no one could really see what was going on. And I had my hands down on myself and like touching baby's head the whole time as I was pushing. And I would not let anyone touch me, like anywhere. My midwife was like, "Oh, could I see where things are at?" I was like, "Nope." And I mean, it was much more intense than that. But I truly felt that like if I moved my hands, that something bad was going to happen. And I just needed to have my hands there and no one else's. And I mean, thankfully I had a really good relationship with my midwife. I had the background of being on a lot of births. So I had a bit more knowledge of kind of what to do and what to expect. But there are times I think where just in the moment, a woman can tell you like what she wants or doesn't want. And I've always been really aware and careful of that during birth, that, okay, standard, like generally I put a warm compress here and this is what we do. Can I try that? Sure. Okay, great. Let me try that. If you absolutely hate it, tell me and I will stop immediately, just because it's a very sensitive time and you just don't know what you're going to feel or want in that moment. And I was honestly so surprised about how strong-willed I felt about nobody touching me anywhere the whole time. I was like, if you touch me, like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I can't handle it.
Well, and that's a good just explanation of what you just said and I always am telling our moms, like, having like, and I think you mentioned it earlier too, like having just a thought process through the things you want and almost like a pecking order of like, this is kind of my ideal, but then thinking through all the things that are possible and what you think you want, but having thought through, well, what if in the moment I don't want any assistance, and knowing that all of it is okay. Like, yes. I think that's the most important thing, right? And I obviously know you fully agree with that, but it's...
Yes, exactly. I really feel like the birthing person needs to be in charge and the medical staff is there to facilitate and make sure everything is proceeding accordingly. But, if I'm at a birth, like it's not my baby, that's not my family. It is their experience. And my goal is to you aid that experience, keep everyone safe, like intervene if needed, of course. But, midwives, we say we're really good at sitting on our hands and trying to just let birth do its thing and knowing when there needs to be a little bit of intervention. And yeah, I could go down a whole rabbit hole of, unnecessary interventions and how they lead to X, Y, and Z. And because I think that's a huge deal in our system as well, that we start with one thing that could lead to another. And then.
Do you want to share an example? What's like a common example?
Oh, well, kind of like you said before, is, we shouldn't be as rushed maybe as we are for labor and pushing and such. So perfect scenario is, oh, you've been laboring for this long now. We really think things should speed up a little bit. Let's get you on Pitocin. And so I'm not going fast enough. Okay, I guess I need this Pitocin. You go on Pitocin, you're like, oh, these are so strong, because Pitocin makes crazy strong contractions.
Yes,
I think I need an epidural. Okay, let's get you an epidural. Nothing wrong with that. But sometimes epidurals can slow labor even more. Oh, let's turn up the Pitocin. Oh, baby doesn't like that. Baby's in distress, and worst case scenario, it's like, okay, yep, we got to do C-section. This isn't going well. And there's a lot that can, lead to the next intervention and ultimately end in a C-section. Is what we see.
Which, and I'll just add a statement to that, because I'm just always, in the sense of like, I'm always like, C-sections are there for a reason. They can be amazing. But if it's not something you really want, back to the initial thing, like we were saying, like you need to be in charge, and also having your birth partner, whether it's midwife or, whoever there to help speak for you. I'm sure you
Yeah.
fully agree, especially if you're in a medical facility.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I think so. And I think my vision for, future clients and kind of what I kind of see evolving is talking a lot with women who are planning hospital births. Because I feel like that environment is where we need advocacy the most. Yeah. And, and some places do better than others, and providers are busy. The pandemic has been a crazy time. Everywhere is short staffed. Everyone's trying to do their best. And, but there's just so many gaps I feel like to fill, and we're all just trying to help fill those
Navigate it.
gaps.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Carly, I have a question with, if a mom is trying, or a woman is thinking about, okay, they're kind of thinking, maybe I do want to do a home birth. Maybe should I go to the hospital? Right. Like, I think that's very confusing for a lot of women, or a lot of women feel like, oh, well, I absolutely should do it at a hospital, but maybe, maybe there's other options. And personally, I'll say, just because I worked with so many pregnant women over the years too, that I see it both ways. Because if baby is under distress and you need an emergency C-section and you're not near a medical facility, then time can be against you. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm always, and again, that's just information. I never say
Yes.
that. So I'm not here to scare anybody, but it is a thing that just needs to be in the thought process. But I also see the major advantages of birthing at home in your space where you can relax more and you don't have people rushing you. So like, I see it both ways. So from your perspective, how do you help women decide what's the best option for them? I know you maybe can't give them a yes or no, but what are some of the questions you might ask them to think about as to what's the best fit for them?
Sure. And so, yes, home birth, hospital, and then birthing centers can be a great middle ground for a lot of people too. So, well, first and foremost, to birth out of the hospital, you do need to be considered low risk. So looking at someone's health and whether it's pre-pregnancy or during their pregnancy, because things can come up during pregnancy where you definitely should not be out of the hospital. So looking at your risk, looking at, what your birth goals are, and what your fears are, and, and those sorts of things. If one of your biggest goals is to have a natural birth and you're low risk, then I really do believe being out of the hospital is one of the best ways to facilitate that, because you're less likely to receive unnecessary interventions, and you're with a team of people who see natural birth all the time and want to promote that, if you will. I don't know if promote is the right word. And also, so I've definitely had people want home births who live 5 minutes from the hospital or who live 45 minutes from the hospital. And so that's a really big discussion. So, all the birth centers that I have worked at, well, most of them are 5 minutes from the hospital. So from my perspective, if you have a good midwife who's monitoring accordingly and paying attention to any little flags, I would say you can avoid emergency C-sections. There's, of course, extenuating circumstances. So I don't want to discredit or belittle anyone's awful experiences. And being 5 minutes away feels really safe to me, having been in those emergency situations where I'm like, okay, this isn't great. Let's go to the hospital. We get there, and within a couple hours, they're like, yep, we're going back for a C-section, or baby, they do have a vaginal birth, but baby needed extra attention right away for whatever reason. And then I have clients who live out on an island, or like deep on Camino or something, and they really want a home birth. And so that's just it's a deeper informed consent discussion about, okay, like these are the things that could put you or baby's lives at risk. Like, are you willing to take that risk? You've had a healthy pregnancy, you've had positive births in the past. There are things that make that, I guess, a little more okay, but it's deep personal choice, and everyone has different reasons for wanting to be in or out of the hospital.
Yeah.
I definitely have people who, think natural birth might be something for them, but their anxiety is so high. Like, they've come to me wanting a birth center birth, and we have lots of discussions, and we have a few tools out of the hospital, like birthing tubs or nitrous oxide, like things that can be used to calm anxiety and help nerves, that can help. But sometimes they don't. And I've had to have some frank conversations with people about, look, I really think that you might want a few more resources at your hand. But like you said, it's like, I'm not here to make decisions for anybody. It's about giving
these are great.
information.
I appreciate you saying all that, because that's what I was wanting. Because I think so many times women just think, oh, I'm supposed to do it this way. Like hospital is maybe the only option for me, or, whatever. Or maybe it's like, oh, a home birth. It's the only thing I've ever thought of. But then there's just so many multitudes of factors and information gathering and, education, which is, you and I are both so big on, like, education and learning, and just learning your options and going through scenarios, not in a way to be fearful or scared, but to have pre-thought things through. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Adding one thing to that. So let's say someone's not another option that I don't think people realize. If you're birthing in the hospital, there are ways to stay at home as long as possible, like laboring at home for as long as possible, because I think, and again, goes back to education. I think we get, like, oh, I've had the contractions for an hour. They're kind of intense. I got to go in. Or, oh, my water broke. I need to go in right now. So there are so many different ways to be supported and be safe in your home until it's really go time. And then you're not spending 24 hours laboring at the hospital. You might go there and get to have a baby a few hours later. So I've had scenarios. The water breaking comes up a lot because there's just really different philosophies about that and from different providers. So often water breaks, you head in, it's like, okay, your water's broken, time to have a baby. You're not having contractions, get you on the Pitocin, let's go. Where about 90 to 95% of women, when their water breaks, will go into labor spontaneously within 24 hours. And so I really feel like in that scenario specifically, I feel really strongly of giving our bodies that chance. And I see it work. And that was my experience. My water broke at 9 p.m., no contractions. I was very upset. I was like, what? Yeah, my mom was over coincidentally, and she's like, oh, this is so exciting. And my husband, he's so great. He's just like, he's been married to a midwife, and he's like, she's not happy. This is not what she wants right now. And so I had to kind of relax, and I had a little cry, got in the bathtub, and was just, like, okay, it's going to be fine. And I went to sleep. It was magical. I went to sleep, woke up, went into labor at 8 a.m. and had my baby that day.
That's like perfect.
Yeah, it was perfect. But I feel like not a lot of women are given that chance of time after their water breaks to like let their body realize what's going on, let some hormones shift, and let labor kick into action naturally.
That's a theme. This is a theme of our conversation, Carly. Like rushing. I'm hearing this theme that we are rushed. That's kind of life, right? We are rushing all the time.
All the time.
And we have to slow down. And I think with this conversation, and I know, again, there are some women, when they go into labor and they don't make it to the hospital. So trust me, like that happens. that can happen. Absolutely. Right. So there's just such a wide spectrum. And so at the end of the day, it's really all about listening to your body and having all this education behind you so that you start to understand and you're learning about your body. This is one thing that, I become so passionate about just educating women about their body in general, their pelvic floor, we just don't know. We're not taught this stuff. And if we don't know, we don't know. And I think this is where just learning so much more about the process of birth and labor and what to expect, or what are my options, what to ask. I get that a lot because we do calls, for our prenatal program, and we have women that are like, I don't know what to ask. I'm like, get on those calls. You will learn so much from the conversations because they just don't even know what to ask. Because there's,
exactly.
Social
It's
media
like
is filled with all sorts of stuff. Some good,
like,
some indifferent, some not so good.
Yeah, it's just like you don't know what you don't know, and especially like with deep core and pelvic floor and a lot of the stuff that you're doing, which I love. I'm so glad that it's becoming more and more mainstream to talk about those things and to go to a pelvic floor physical therapist after birth and such, because even like 5 years ago, it wasn't really as much of a mainstream thing, not at all.
It's really been the last couple of years because I've been talking pelvic floor for a long time. And when I first was starting to talk about it with clients were like, what? They thought it was just like saying a cuss word or something. I'm like, no, it's your pelvic floor. Like it's a part of your body. And they had no idea what I was talking about. And now it is, the last couple of years has really enhanced, which is really awesome. So
really great. So I would say in my first 1 to 2 years of practice, our knowledge and kind of protocol around it was, okay, if someone's having, heaviness or incontinence or, extreme symptoms, those were the people we sent to pelvic floor physical therapists after birth. And now everybody, it's like, I want everyone to go.
Yes. So speaking of pelvic floor and postpartum a little bit, what are, besides that being one of the recommendations, what are some of your other recommendations to help moms with recovery postpartum?
Yes. Physically. Is that where you're
anything.
Anything? Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a lot. So,
what are your top couple things? I know that could probably be a whole conversation on its own, but what's the top couple things to help women in that, just the healing?
Postpartum. Well, it goes back to it, not rushing.
Not rushing, ladies. You got it. If you you get nothing else from our conversation, please take away that.
Don't rush. So, I get a lot of wide eyes when I say after birth, you need to be in bed for at least a week. Like I say, and obviously I get that's more or less feasible if it's your first baby or if you have 5 kids. Probably not going to happen. But if you can rest, that first week is so essential to let your body rest. And then in the couple weeks after that, I think instead of waiting till that magic 6-week mark where you're allowed to exercise and do all the things, right? At 2, 3, 4 weeks, letting them know, I think some of what you do as well, like breathwork and core engagement and pelvic floor engagement, those things you can do them laying down, like you're still resting. And my little bit of what I used to do in my 6-week appointment as a midwife, because there's so much to talk about in so little time, I would show them how to do some deep core breathing and how to engage their core, how to do some pelvic bridge lifts and some little toe raises and whatnot, just 3 simple exercises. I'm like, I know this is just the tip of the iceberg, but you can do some of these things and you should really pay attention to your core before you're getting back into anything else. So physically starting some of that rehab early, allowing yourself to rest. And I think nutrition plays a role. And I don't know if this totally fits into recovery, but something that I, especially having just lived through the early postpartum time, I talk a lot about what is your support system? Who can help you? And if you don't have a lot of help, how can we make this transition a little less overwhelming? Because it really takes a lot of effort and a lot of energy and a lot of help. So if someone is able to kind of build that support system and let those people know ahead of time what they might need, whether that's just someone to talk to, help with laundry or cooking, or just coming over for companies so they can take a shower. I think that's really important too, because early motherhood can be really isolating. So especially just during this time, thankfully, we're kind of seeing some light at the end of the tunnel with all this isolation stuff with the pandemic. So being able
to,
being able to be more in community, I think is part of the recovery process, if you will, and finding
Yeah.
your new normal.
Yeah, especially I think, well, for all, but especially first time moms when it's new to them and they, I think
Yeah.
there's so many questions. And that's one thing I do want you to, I'd love your perspective on it. Like what is some of your best advice to first time moms, whether like, especially like kind of circling back to like birth itself, right? Because if they've never done it before, I know there can be a lot of fear or like, what is it with people that randomly see a pregnant woman on an elevator or somewhere and they have to tell them some horror story? I don't understand that, right? So what is some of your advice for first time moms going into all of this to help like calm all of the noise?
Yes. I think just on repeat, like you can do this. Your body was designed for this. It's a whirlwind, it's crazy, but you can. Because like you said, like we're told the horror stories, we're told all these terrible things, but the truth of the matter is most of the time birth can go really well. And yeah, I'm huge on trying to take some of the fear out of that. And it's really hard to do, especially if you haven't seen a lot of births or been to a lot of births. Because like you said, the more you can take fear out of it. But I think it sounds really broad, but I just say like, you can do this. And I've seen so many women get to the point of like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And then they do. Like I see them overcome that obstacle, and I'm like going to get choked up talking about it because it's just like, it is the best thing to get to witness a baby being born and seeing that mom every time, but especially first time moms, like realize like, oh my gosh, I just did that. And you feel like you can do anything after that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, love it.
And I feel like visualization is so big in that, and kicking out the negative crap as best you can and always pulling back to what it is you want. What is it you want? What is your experience? And
exactly.
We could take 100 women and every single one of them may want something a little bit different. And so it's just remembering that you can, again, even in this stage of gathering all this information, it is exactly that. It is information. It is not either one of us telling you what to do. It is all information. And I think sometimes we just need to remind ourselves of that. Like, okay, I'm hearing all this noise and all this stuff. Like, okay, well, start doing your research and kind of which way do you feel like you're gravitating towards? What do you want to learn more about? Do you want to learn more about natural birth? Do you want to learn more about what's it like to birth in a hospital? Right. And sometimes I think it is great to talk to other moms and friends and stuff like that and kind of get their perspective, but remember it is truly that it is their perspective and not them projecting it on you, so.
Yes, exactly. And I spoke with someone recently who had reached out and was, she's like, I'm not pregnant yet, but I feel like I need to meet with you because I need to know, like when we talked a lot about, different birthing options and where to birth and kind of how to start thinking about those different things. Because birth is just everyone has, like you said, their own kind of deep rooted philosophy in life. And that kind of carries over to birth and what you want. And my hope is just to spread information. So many times I'll say, oh, have you guys thought about this? And it's just like, no, definitely not. I'm like, okay, well, here's XYZ. Here's some research, here's some information, more information about it, read it over, and get back to me and we'll talk it through. So information sharing is huge.
Absolutely. I love everything you're doing. I think we just need to keep talking about it more and more and more, because I think so many women don't understand they have options and don't understand that they should be the one empowered. It is their body. It is their baby. It is their experience. It is, and I think somebody had to just choose to listen to like what they're told instead of like, hey, there's so much out there. Even if that's what you want to do, that's great.
And I don't think we all realize how like you are going to remember your birth forever. Like it is one of the most pivotal, impactful events in a woman and the entire family's life. Like I'm not leaving dads and partners out of this. Like it impacts everybody for the long term. So
Yes,
it really
yes.
needs to
Yep.
be about you, and how you're going to remember that is really important.
Yeah. I love this, Carly. This is so great. So I know we could keep talking about a lot of things, but I want to ask you, is there one thing that we haven't talked about yet that you're like, I absolutely have to share this?
Oh, I think the first thing that comes to mind, and it kind of talks about, I feel like it's maybe back to our rushing and choice and being in charge, that knowing that if you're not happy in your pregnancy situation with your provider, it really is never too late to change. I've had this discussion with a lot of people, whether no matter where you've made your original plan to birth or and whatnot, if you're seeing a provider who is not hearing you, not meeting your needs, not respecting you, you don't have to stay with them. Like, find somebody else. And even if you're in your third trimester, like, it's not too late. It's really not too late. I think that's something that I've talked with a lot of friends about, and a lot of clients that, whether they're coming to the birth center or if someone who's just like last minute, they decide they want a hospital birth, it's your choice, and you don't need to feel like you're stuck. You're not going to hurt anybody's feelings. Like, you have to do what's best for you. So making that decision, even if it feels kind of a lot like, oh, I have to transfer all my records and do all this and meet new people. But in my experience, anyone who's made the change because they're feeling uncomfortable with a provider, it has been worth it.
Yeah, it's because it's your intuition speaking up. So it's that like trusting in yourself and your intuition to help guide you as well. So great advice, Carly. I love it. Will you share with everyone where they can reach out to you, find more about everything that you're offering?
Sure. Yes. So my Instagram is Carly's Birth Consulting, which can lead you to my website, which is carlysbirthconsulting.com. And I call it birth consulting because I do a lot of different things. So on my website, you'll find different support packages, whether it's virtual meetings and email and text and that sort of thing. I also offer childbirth education, labor support line. And my email is yourbirth@carlysbirthconsulting.com.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Carly. This has been great.
Yes, I am here for the families, here for the women, and I'm especially just excited to get to have connected with you. Being local is really exciting as well. So yeah, I'm excited to keep growing.
Thanks, Carly.
Yes.